Hello, my name is Brian Kirsch, and today we're going to be talking a little bit more about our storage setup here, and in particular, it's a continuation of our first two episodes of kind of getting the hardware set up for the Synology and then getting the operating system installed. So as you see, it has come up here, and it's asking for server name, username, password, password strength, and all that. So this is your first initial screen you're going to see when you get the unit up and running, and it's asking you for the credentials to sign in. So I'm actually going to pause the video here, and then I'm going to enter in that information, and we'll continue on. Okay, so I entered in the credentials that I wanted, and when I hit next, I come back to this next page here. This is the quick connect. If I want to set up like a Synology account and kind of tie that into the vendor, I don't want to do that at this point. So there is a skip this next step. It's a little hidden, but you'll find it. Are you sure you want to be able to do that? Yes, I want to skip it. That's great. I'm not going to share the location. I'm just going to go ahead and kind of get it up and running here. So I'm not going to do device analytics, nothing like that. It gives me my tips, and that's great. So one of the first things I want to do is actually get my network set up. So it's kind of going to yell at me a little bit to finish getting things set up. So let's go ahead and let's actually kind of take a look at the network side of the house and make sure I kind of get that set. Now, as I mentioned, right now this is running DHCP because it's just pulling from my network. But here's the problem. I don't want DHCP. I don't want my storage frame moving. I don't want it to have to second guess to know where is it, where isn't it. When I reboot it, did it come up as something different? I just don't want to deal with that. So I'm going to be doing a manual configuration. And I know my network, so I know what IP address I'm going to give it. I'm going to leave it at the Google DNS just for ease of use. And I already know what my subnet and my masks are. So again, I would personally recommend doing fixed IP addressing for storage frames, printers, different aspects like that. Things that typically you don't replace, that are utility things. I would suggest the same thing within a corporation. Printers, copiers, smart, like Wi-Fi devices and that. The access points, not the end devices, but the points themselves should be fixed IP addresses. In my network, I've got basically 1 through 20 reserved. I did that to put in devices like this that need hard-coded addresses. So once I did that, it basically reset the network stack, and it brought me back into my new address, which happened to be a .11. As I look at it, I see the package center. I can take a look at what's installed. I can look at what I need to add in. If I'm looking at anything, like exFAT, I'll probably add that in. I'll buy that at some point. Some of the newer ones, it could be included, but you kind of get an idea of the different utilities that you can add to this. There's some pretty advanced things. You can run these type of things as media servers. You can put antivirus on there, development stuff. But keep in mind, these things can run those services, but it is a limited processor. It's a smaller chip. It's not a full desktop blown chip. So they're going to run a little bit slower, or it's going to be not quite as many features in that. It's designed for file sharing and that, which is great, but that doesn't mean it's got the same utility and the same horsepower to do what a normal desktop or a server would do. So you just got to be aware of that. Okay, so as I come down here, I'm pulling up the menu. I'm going to actually take a look at my storage manager, and what I should see is all my disks. So, whoops. Kind of got my menus confused here. So I'll kind of bring this up. So you see it's got 8 disks. It's looking at the different storage pools in that. It picked up the volume from what I had built. So when I look at it, it's got one volume of 17 terabytes, and it's got one of volume 2 of 5 terabytes. I'm going to end up wiping both of those and then basically just creating a single volume. But you can also see how I can have a RAID 0 here This one I'd have to take a look at, what the storage pools are, but this one looks like it's the other 6 disks that kind of combined and created a RAID 5. It's what was built from when I basically migrated it. So I'm going to end up wiping all of these and just doing a single RAID group for that. What you choose is really going to depend on your application. RAID 0 is a stripe, so you might be using that for logging, something with a little bit higher speed but no data protection. The RAID 1s would be the mirror. You'd do that for like critical data. If you were in an enterprise, that might be an operating system drive, a server OS drive, or that might be for home, critical data, documents, pictures, media, things like that. Something that, you want that redundancy. Keep in mind, that goes into that storage efficiency. If you're doing a RAID 0, you get 100% storage efficiency because you're using both drives and you're aggregating the space and the I/O, so the IOPS. In a RAID 1, a mirror, you're getting half the capacity. So if you've got 2 drives, you get basically the capacity of 1, but you have full data protection. So the RAID 0 versus RAID 1 depends what you're looking for. Data protection versus capacity or performance. RAID 5 is kind of a little bit of a combination of both. You need a minimum of 3 disks. Typically, most people would say 4, but that's basically striping your data with parity, which is a mathematical calculation to reconstruct that data. Most people are doing that across those 4 disks to provide both a level of redundancy. You could lose 1 disk, and performance. You have multiple spindles providing more IOPS, which is really critical. The downside to it, there's a write penalty. You're doing some math as you write your data, and it's expensive. You got to have a storage frame that can handle, multiple drives, and you got to be careful of a double disk fault. If you lose 2 drives in a RAID 5, you lost all your data. So the RAID groups you choose definitely have an impact, and you have to be aware of that as you go with these things. Now, I'm going to go ahead and wipe out the RAID groups and kind of start this one over from scratch. The downside to doing that is I will trigger a disk consistency check. And that is basically the unit is going to scan the disks, look for bad sectors, tag them, and do all that fun stuff. Now, I have done this on my other units that have a little bit larger disks in it, and it is a multi-day event. So once you kick it off, go on vacation, come back 4 days, 5 days later, and it will be done. That's because if you got any hunk of data on there, it's going to take time. Even if the disks are empty, it can definitely still take quite a bit of time. It's looking for physical flaws or anything like that. So when you start playing with the RAID groups, be aware that that consistency check, which is something that you cannot cancel, could take hours, if not days. So be aware of that. It's one of those things that kind of does it once when you kind of initialize and get everything set up. It won't do it again unless you make a change to things, but you kind of got to deal with it while it's doing it. So just something to be aware of. So again, thank you for being with me on this. And once we get the RAID group set, we can take a look at some of the other features. But realistically, this is a lot of what you needed. This gets everything up and running. So hopefully this helps you out. And again, thank you for watching.